I'm Steve from This Week with Cars, and I was challenged by Kevin over at Junkyard Digs to a $1,000 off-road challenge, and I thought that would be the perfect place to spend time with this $300 Land Rover that I bought. Unfortunately, when you saw me get this truck running, I had to mess with the fuel pump to get it going. Now the fuel pump itself has completely quit, so I need to address that before I can do anything. It will not start right now. So let's start with that and see if we can get this built into something worthy of challenging these other guys to an off-road challenge. Part of the rules is you can only spend $1,000 on your vehicle. In this case, I only spent $300, and you can only spend $1,000 on parts for it. So I got one of these fuel pumps off of Amazon. This is a full fuel pump plus sender. This was really cheap. I can't afford to buy the Land Rover version of this, so let's put this in and see if this is any good, see if this will last. So far this is looking pretty good. I'm sure that this battery is no good, so I'm going to hook up a jump pack and we can see if this is going to start up and run. If you remember my first videos on this truck was completely filled with mice. I think I've caught about 40 mice in this truck. It doesn't look like I'm catching them anymore. Hopefully they're all out, but of course the smell is still here. Let's see if it starts now. After putting it into gear and moving it from where it was, the engine is quieted down. Looks like we have something to work with here. All right, I'm fueling it up for the first time. We'll see if the fuel gauge works. Well, it looks like the fuel gauge and the temperature gauge do work. Those are the two most important gauges, so I'm happy with that. Now that I know that this truck runs, I do need a new battery. This one doesn't work at all. One thing we're allowed to do is steal parts out of other cars. I'm gonna go take the battery out of that Land Rover, put it in here, and I'll save some money. Here's the battery that I put in here during the video when I got this truck running. So I'll take this out and put it in our challenge truck. I think it would be silly to not spend at least a little bit of money on maintenance, so I have some oil, an oil filter, and new spark plugs. I'm gonna throw those in here, and hopefully this engine will last. Well, the oil change is done, but one thing I haven't talked about, maybe I did in my previous video, I don't remember, but when I found this truck, it had been sitting and you couldn't get it out of park, and they had tried pulling the truck from the tie rod, and that bent the tie rod into a V pattern. So what I've done now is I've straightened the tie rod back out and then welded this angle iron on it to give it some strength. I hope that'll hold up. I couldn't find any replacements other than the stock for the tie rod. They're pretty expensive, probably more than I would have wanted to spend on this truck. And this angle iron only cost me $5, so I think that's a pretty good fix. I'm going to need a good set of tires for this truck, and I don't have it in the budget to buy a set for this truck, but I have these tires down here that are off of another one of my Land Rovers. Fortunately, these are Series 2 wheels. The bolt pattern is a lot smaller than that for the Series 1. So I'll have to mount these onto the wheels that I have on the truck right now. And then after the competition, I can have these tires back. But these should work great. I hope that I'll have enough clearance. So I'm going to get these mounted and we'll take a look at them. Here it is. Those tires look fantastic on it. Looks like there is probably enough clearance on the front. Here on the back, I am probably going to need to do some trimming, especially back here. I think I'm just going to start by trimming this back a little bit, and hopefully that will give me enough room. I'd rather not do a body lift right now. I don't have the time, and I'm sure all of the bolts are rusty and they're going to be hard to get out. It might be something that I tackle in the future. And besides, if I want to go to even bigger tires, The fenders are going to need to be trimmed anyways. I'll get these cut up a little bit and go from there. Using the paintless dent tools, that dent that was right there just popped right out. This does need to be pulled out slightly more so the door doesn't rub on it. I'll get this pulled out a little bit, and then hopefully this light stays in place. Both fenders are cut. Can you tell where? Well, luckily this piece right here peels off so you can relocate it so that once you're done cutting, it looks like a factory line once you've stuck it back on. And then down here, cut the edge off of this corner, and that gives plenty of room for the tire now. Part of the rules for driving at this off-road park state that I must have tow points on the front of the vehicle. This bumper is in very bad shape, so I'm not sure that they would like it if I put some tow points onto this one, but that's okay because I wanted a winch anyways. So I did get this really cheap winch bumper and this really cheap winch off of Amazon. I don't know if this is going to be any good. We'll take a look at that later. The first thing I need to do is get this old bumper off the Land Rover, and that's pretty easy because it's only held on by 4 bolts, 2 on each side. These take a 17mm socket, and it should come off real easy. Now that I have the bumper installed, let's take a look at this winch. It says made in China. I don't know if this is going to be any good, but it was cheap, and that's all that I can use for this challenge. So we've got a power wire, some instructions, hook for the cable, some installation bolts, the remote. This is the little thing that you put on the hook that you can pull on. Well, I have to say the winch does look and feel like it's good quality. Even came with a cover for it. Here's the control box. Z Super is the brand name. This was the cheapest winch of this capacity that I could find on Amazon. This is a 9,500 pound winch. Should be enough to get the Land Rover out of a stuck condition. And it also came with a nice cable pre-installed. I'm going to pull this out and set it on the bumper, see if the mounting holes line up at all. Setting the winch on the bumper real quick, it looks like the holes are going to line up. You can see there's the holes there. Looks like it does line up with the brackets. So I just need to feed this through. I actually need to mount this piece up first, and then I can bolt the winch down. I have this bolted on. Now I have 2 options. I can either bolt the control box on the top first, or get the winch mounted where I want it, and then make sure that I can position this where I want it. I think I'm going to try the winch first, but there is these 2 little screws back here that hold this on that I will have to get to it, but I think the oil cooler leaves enough room to get to those with the winch mounted up. So I'm going to try to mount the winch first and see how that goes. I have the winch fastened down now. I have the control box sitting on there. I was able to tighten those 2 screws back there, but the strange thing is there's no lock nuts, there's no lock washers, nothing to keep those screws tight from vibrating loose. So I'm gonna have to think about what I'm gonna do to put onto those to hold them in place. I don't want the control box to just fall off. The next thing I need to do is hook up the wiring. Some of the wiring from the control box just hooks straight to the winch, and some of it needs to go to the battery. The 3 wires coming out of the control box, yellow, black, and red, pretty self-explanatory. They just go straight to the motor. The terminals were color-coded, so that was easy. Then I have this big, longer red wire and this ground wire. These need to go straight to the battery. This one was already wired up to the control box, so that's easy. Just take that up to the battery. This ground wire mounts on the underside of the motor, so I need to get up under here to try to get that wire mounted onto that post. I probably should have put that in there before, but there's plenty of room. I can do that right now. I have the positive and negative wires connected now at the battery. I'm going to test it out before maybe I tidy up some of this wiring and maybe put some of it in corrugation. First, I'm going to try the wired remote. Okay, it says out and in. Looks like that does work. I'm really surprised about this for a winch at this price, but it also came with 2 wireless remotes. Let's try one of these out. Seems to work pretty good, actually. I'm kind of impressed. So what are my first impressions of this? The remote feels super cheap. This hook feels super cheap. And of course this just looks crazy cheap. But the winch itself actually feels like it's pretty good quality. It sounds good. The rope looks okay. The cables seem just fine to me. Once we get out there and get stuck, we'll find out if this cheap winch was worth it. But first impressions are pretty good. If this actually does work, I would definitely buy another one of these. Besides having a winch, one of the reasons I put this bumper on is so that I have tow points in the front. And I have a couple shackle mounts that will just mount through that hole. You stick this in through the back side, and then it's got a circlip that holds it in place, and then the shackle goes on the front. I'll put one of these in right now and show you what it looks like with it installed. There's the front tow hooks installed. It's pretty neat that they will swivel any direction. That's something that a lot of shackle mounts won't do. And now I have a place to hang my hook as well. So we'll get that tightened up. I'm pretty excited about this. This is a brand new grill. This is from Brit Part. And I'm glad that I was able to afford this. This was actually only $30. It's an aftermarket grill. It's not an official Land Rover part. And I may need to trim it up a little, so I'm glad that it wasn't expensive. And once I get that mounted in there, hopefully this truck looks a whole lot better. After a lot of trimming, I got the grill to go in there. I haven't put the bonnet down yet to see what it's going to look like. Well, that certainly looks a lot more respectable than what I had. I'm glad that I put something in there. Here in the back, this is what I've done for safety equipment. I originally intended to mount a jerry can over here in this spot where the seat that mounts to the side would be. That's why there's a seat belt over here. But the jerry can didn't fit in that hole, so I decided to mount my fire extinguisher there. It's bolted both to the floor, and I think I might have a couple bolts that go into the side. Don't quite remember. I've got my first aid kit as required. For my rear toe point, I'm using one of these. This is the same as what the Camel Trophy Land Rovers use. It's great to pull this pin, then you can just put your rope in there. I like this a lot better than having to use a shackle. The shackle pins are always kind of a pain. This is a whole lot easier. I did get a lock for it so that no one can steal it. I'm going to get this mounted up. I'll show you what that looks like. We are required to have a tow rope, so this is my faithful Bubba rope here. This is a kinetic strap. The thing that I really like about the tow jaw is how easy it is to put a rope on it. You can just flip that up. Drop your pin back in. And then if I want to, secure it on the bottom there. And my rope is now affixed really well there, and I didn't have to use a shackle to do that. I prefer this a lot more. It looks a lot cleaner, and it's a lot quicker as well. The rules say that I need a CB radio, but obviously I'm not going to install one in this junk truck, so I have a portable one. This one should meet the rules, and I don't have to spend any of my money to put a CB radio in here. I did find a good way to mount my first aid kit onto the back of the headrest here. I have a strap that goes across. The whole thing is padded with Velcro on the back, so if in emergency I can just pull it off real quick, and it should hold it on there real good. If it doesn't, it'll just fall on the ground. It won't hurt anything, but that puts it in a real easy to access situation, and I can just reach back from the driver's seat and grab it if I need to. I wanted to do a little test on the truck before I took it off-roading, and it doesn't seem to be running on all the cylinders anymore. In fact, it won't even idle, so I'm not sure what's wrong with it. I hope it's not too catastrophic. I do have some time. I can get another truck if I need to, but I'll get this back to the shop and take a look at it. As you might guess, it is not in running condition right now. It was running great, and then slowly, as I would park it and then restart it, it was getting worse and worse, and now it's to the point where it won't start at all anymore. Now, I'm not sure what's wrong with it. It has spark, it has fuel, so I'm not sure why it's not running. I pulled the spark plugs out of it, and they do have a little bit of oil on it, not bad. I did remember that the truck was smoking, so I'm going to try a device called anti-fouler. This is a little device that your spark plug gets plugged into. There's a little hole on the bottom of it there, and that protects the spark plug from getting oil on it. You just screw in the spark plug onto this side, and you screw this into where the spark plug would normally go, and it protects that spark plug. I'm going to replace all 8 spark plugs with new ones and put in 8 of these anti-foulers, and we'll see if it starts then, and then also see if this truck will run longer than it did before. I hope that this will solve the problem, and if it does, this is a really neat tool to use on a vehicle where you just need to get a little bit more life out of it. Here's some of the plugs that I pulled out of the truck. They are a little dirty. They're not really bad. You can see there is some oil on there, but they're not horribly bad. So I'll get these anti-foulers plus plugs thrown in there, and we'll see how much of a difference it makes. Well, hopefully the truck starts at all. There's the first one in place, and if you didn't know any better, the spark plug looks in a pretty good place. It's looks pretty normal. It's easy to access, and it's not hitting anything. I hope that the rest of them go this well and that they don't bump into anything. I have them all installed, and I've gotten them all tightened up. I haven't put the HT leads back on yet, but none of them interfere, and they did all fit. This is the side, at least here on an American car with the steering going through here, this is the side that has the most stuff that it could interfere with, so I'm sure the other side will be just fine. So I'll get the other side installed, I'll get the HT leads hooked up, and we'll see if it starts. The spark plugs that I'm using are from NGK. Another thing that I could do besides putting anti-fouler on is to actually get hotter spark plugs, which will burn the oil, but you could overheat the top of your pistons doing it that way, and I wanted to give these things a try. So that's another thing that you could do, but it could damage your engine if you're running your engine for a long time, burning all that hot oil sitting on the top of your pistons. Now I have the right side of the car all done and the HT leads plugged in. It's time to try to start the truck and see what happens. Okay, here goes nothing. Let's see what it thinks about this. It did run, so it must have been the spark plugs that were the problem. I knew I had fuel, I knew I had spark, but the spark wasn't actually making it into the cylinders. Sounds better than it has in a long time. So I guess these things do work. We'll see how long the engine will run on the anti-foulers and see if the spark plugs get fouled out again. Well, it runs again, and I'm really happy. I'm not going to touch the truck. I'm not going to be running it or testing it until we go out to Myobi and have our little competition. So I hope these things keep this engine running, and it'll actually get a bit of life out of the engine. I think I'm as ready for this challenge as I'm going to be. I'd like to go over some of the rules, particularly the rules for the off-road park, and that way you know why I spent some of the money the way I did. Then I'm going to go over the rules for the challenge, and I'll also tell you a little bit how this challenge came about. So first, for the off-road park, I must have working brakes, I must have seat belts and be wearing them at all times. The windshield must be free from dangerous cracks. Steering free from excessive play. There is some play, I hope I'm okay with that. Tilt points must be fitted on the front and rear of the rig, so that's why I got these, and it's also why I upgraded the front bumper, because they do require secure tilt points, and says that they cannot be welded on, everything must be bolted on. That's also why I have the tilt point in the rear, so I can meet those rules. Tow strap. So I must carry a tow strap. That's why I've got my Bubba rope. It must be in good condition. No hooks are allowed. I must have a CB radio with me at all times. I must have a fire extinguisher in the rig with me. And I must also have a first aid kit in the rig with me. Batteries must be secured, not with bungee cords. My exhaust system must be free from excessive noise, and I must not have any leaks. The way this challenge came about is Kevin from Junkyard Digs sent me a message, said, hey, we're going to do a cheap truck challenge down at Myobi, buy a beat vehicle for $1,000. Do you want to join us? And I said, heck yeah. So, and as far as I know, it's Kevin. He's got a Bronco. A guy named Ron, he's got a Bronco as well. There's me. And Derek from Vice Grip Garage is supposed to be building a vehicle. I have no idea what he's building. There might be others. I'm kind of out of the loop besides what the rules for the challenge are. And here's what the rules are. A vehicle must be a cheap turd. Shoot for $1,000 or less. Contestants have a $1,000 modification budget for their vehicle. And this includes any repairs that we have to do to the vehicle to make it run. Safety equipment does not come out of our budget, and vehicles must pass Myobi safety requirements and pass tech inspection. I can sell parts off the vehicle to add to my budget, and I can borrow parts within reason from other projects as long as they weren't bought specifically for this vehicle. Vehicles aren't required to have any body, but I must use the frame from the vehicle that I started with, and it must be an actual production vehicle. And vehicle doesn't have to be street legal or have a title, and it can run on any fuel. So there's the rules, and now I'll show you how I did on the budget. So as far as price for the truck, I'll call that the truck budget. I paid $300 for my truck, and we were given a budget of $1,000. So I actually saved $700 on that. For parts, we had a budget of $1,000. And here's what I spent my money on. I spent about $20 on spark plug wires, $45 on a fuel pump, $15 on oil, $7 for an oil filter, $19 for spark plugs, $44 for valve cover gaskets. I spent $4 for the angle iron for my tie rod. I spent $38 for this grill up here. Spent $300 on the winch and $380 for the winch bumper. So my total spent on parts was $881.06, which means I had leftover of $118.94. I did borrow some parts. I did borrow the battery out of the other Land Rover and the tires from another Land Rover. The battery I just about could fit into that budget and buy one specifically for this truck, but the battery is about $20 more than I have to spend here. Now in safety equipment, which was free, I spent $33 for the safety kit, $20 for the extinguisher mount, $80 for the fire extinguisher. These toe points were $80 for the front. That jaw assembly that I have in the back, that's $210. And the clamps that I needed to hold the battery down, those were $37. So I spent $462.12 on safety equipment for the vehicle, which means in total I spent $1,643.28 on my build. I did borrow those a couple items, and if I were to buy those brand new, I would have to add another $700 on there. But those items aren't really a big change for the vehicle. Those are things you can change at any time. So this is what I've done with my essentially $2,000 budget. I kind of like my truck, and I hope it does well. I hope I don't break it. I hope that we go out there and have a lot of fun, and I'm really excited to see what the other guys have brought. Once the video from the event is posted, I will put a link below so that you can go and watch that. If you like this video and want to see more videos like this, comment below and click subscribe.